Hello everyone and welcome to the Brief Earth Creates YouTube channel. Today I'm doing another coloring of the Miss Anya All Year stamp set by the Greeting Farm. This time I'm coloring up the swimsuit Miss Anya for the month of August. So first I'm gonna start by coloring her skin tone. I'm putting a base color of E00, and then I'm moving on to my darkest shade of E04 to identify the shadow areas. So first I'm gonna create the shadows right underneath her hairline, and then I'm going to move on down to right underneath her chin, on her neck, and towards her elbows and on her arms, and then on the curves of her stomach, and then finish onto the legs. Next I'm moving on to my second darkest color, E11, and I'm just going over the shadow areas that I created with the E04 and just extended those shadow areas slightly, creating kind of the knee shadow on the right leg, moving on to the stomach, and then following the hairline or the shadow line underneath her hair on her face, just extending that shadow just slightly. And then I'm moving on to my third color, E21, and I'm adding a little bit more color to her cheeks and extending the shadow underneath her hair. And then I'm moving on to her chest area and her arms, and then I'm moving on to her stomach, and then just dragging the color out a little bit more on her legs, but still keeping a highlight area. Now moving on to my next color of E00, and this time I'm adding a lot more color into the body. It's not my lightest shade on the body, but it's the second lightest shade, so really want to cover some of the surface area. As you can see, I'm pulling that color out a lot more on her face with the E00. Now moving on to the lightest tone that I'm going to use for the body, which is the E000. And I'm just coloring in all the highlight areas with the E000. And then I'm pulling that color more onto her face. And then last, I'm using E00 again to color in the highlight areas on her face. And then I'm going to go in one more time throughout the markers, starting with E11 and working all the way up to the E000, and just creating a deeper shading on the image. I sped up this part of the video since I already went through and identified the shadow areas on her skin. To me, going through a second time adds a little bit more definition to the shadow areas. And then this time I'm coming in with the RV11 just in her cheeks to kind of give her cheeks some pinkish color. And then I'm going to go over that with E000 to blend that out a little bit. And then I'm going to finish off the skin tone with the E00 one more time. And I wanted to give her a brown hair color, so I'm going to go with the E50 shades and then an E49 for my darkest color. So right now I'm just putting down a base coat of E51, and then I'm moving on to an E59, which is my second darkest shade. And I'm just adding in the darkest lines, trying to figure out where I'm going to have the darkest colors. And that's going to be right underneath the hat and right underneath the back of her head. And then I'm pulling out some flick strokes to add some hairlines. There's a lot of dark tones right around the lower bun or the lower ponytail of her hair. And then the highlights kind of towards the top of her head. Now I'm coming in with the E57, and I'm just adding a little bit more color, along with doing the same thing with the E55, and then coming in with the E53. I'm not really perfect with coloring hair yet, but I'm working on it. All it takes is practice, practice, and more practice. So because I thought the hair looked more like a dirty blonde, I'm going to go in with the E49 and work through those colors once again to try to make it into more of a darker shade of a brown. So I'm coming in again with the E59, just following where I added those E49 colors. Then moving on to the E57, and then the E55, and then finishing off with the E53. And adding one more time, going in with the E49 to add some darker hair lines. And next we're moving on to the sunglasses and her little drink bottle. So I'm starting with BG Quadruple Zero and just adding kind of the base glass color. And then I'm going in with the RV02 to add the pink drink. I pictured that she's drinking kind of a pink lemonade. And then I'm moving in with the BG01 to add kind of the shadow to the glass area. And I quickly add with RV06 the kind of the ice cubes. And then I'm moving on with the YGs and using YG01 for the sunglass frames and for the top of the drink tumbler. And I'm adding the shadow of the sunglasses in the drink with the YG05 and YG03. Okay, next we're moving on to her outfit. And I'm going with pink and orange colors to color up her outfit. And her top bodice is going to be a whole pink. And then for her wrap, her bottom wrap, I'm kind of try to add some ombre stripes into it, to the wrap with the pink and the orange. And right now I'm just adding the pink areas, and the white areas are going to be where I'm going to add the orange color. So I'm starting in with her top, and I'm adding the shadow areas with the RV17, and then I'm adding the shadows with the RV14, and I'm only adding RV14 on the bottom because I don't want it to be as dark as the top. I just kind of want it to be like a lighter cover. And then I'm moving on to RV13, and then finishing up with RV11. And then I'm going to go through those colors one more time to finish off the shading of the pinks in her outfit. And now I'm moving on to the orange in her bottom wrap and onto her hat. I'm using YR00 to add a base coat to the orange areas. Now I'm coming in with YR04 to kind of identify where I want the darkest part of the orange part of the wrap to be. And then I'm going to blend that out with YR2 and YR00. And then I'm going to shade the orange hat, but I'm going to start with the darkest color of YR07 to make it a little bit darker than the wrap again, just like we did with the pinks. Okay, next I'm moving on to YR04 and just pulling that color out into the highlight area just a little bit more, especially on the top part of the hat. We don't want to add too much color into the areas where the fold in the hat top and then on the sides are going to be. We want to make sure that it looks curved. And then I'm coming in and blending out the YR04 with a YR02. And then I'm going to finish blending out that orange with the YR00 once again. And just like everything, I'm going to go through one more time and start with the darkest tone just to add more detail or more texture to the shadow areas. Not texture, dimension. More dimension to the shadow areas. And then I'm coming in with YR04 and YR00 to blend that out. So now we're moving on to the last part of the image, the handbag, and I'm going to go with a kind of a bright purple for that. So I'm adding a base color of V000 and then coming in with the darkest shade of V09 to add the shadow areas, and then I'm following those shadow lines with V06, and then moving on to my next color of V05, and I'm blending that out with V01. And I'm going through one more time with the V06, V05, and V01 to blend those colors out a little bit better. So to finish the image off, I'm going to add some detail drops and lines with a white gel pen, just to add a little bit more detail to the imagery and the coloring. So I'm adding some lines to her outfit with a wrap in the top and onto her hat. And in the sunglasses on the frames. Okay, now we're moving on to cutting out the image. So I'm just going to use some scissors and fussy cut the image, and I'm going to leave a small white border around the image just so that I don't have to cut those fine lines, and it will stick out from the background a little bit more on the card. And there you have it, in the summertime image for August of the Miss Anya All Year set from the Greeting Farm. Thanks for watching. Hope you come back soon.